Tim Nicholls is the Leader of the Opposition. Tim Nicholls, you've called on Minister Sterling Hinchliffe to resign. He says today we're running more trains on the network in Brisbane than we were in September. Does that satisfy you?
Well, no, Steve. I think we've just heard one of the train wreck of all train wrecks of interviews. We've got a minister who can't tell you when his interim timetable is going to be finalised. He can't tell you how he's going to recruit more drivers, who's hamstrung by a union agreement that he can't work around, who expects everyone else to take responsibility but fails to do so himself. I mean, Sterling Hinchliffe has to be Australia's worst transport minister.
You've called on him to resign. He says, no, the Premier wants me to stay till I fix this. In other words, he's doing something similar to what Peter Beattie used to do, saying, I'm responsible, I'll sort it out.
Well, this is the man who has presided over the delay in the opening of the Redcliffe Railway line, who on the 18th of August told Parliament he was doing everything he could to make sure it would open on time and on schedule with all the services necessary. This is the minister who presided over 100 services being cancelled last Friday, 70 services cancelled on a Sunday by a tweet sent out at 6 o'clock at night.
This is yesterday.
This is yesterday, without notice to passengers. We'll see more services today and 53 services on Friday being taken offline. This isn't a minister who's fixing a problem. This is a minister who is presiding over the problem. He is cooking up the witch's cauldron of problems.
Now, I asked him about why they're not recruiting externally. He said he conceded they have an agreement in place with the relevant unions, but there is a trigger for externally hiring, although he wasn't able to say what would trigger that. Are you concerned that they're not hiring externally people that are already trained drivers? Oh,
very much so. I mean, we just heard a very feeble excuse about why QR needs to hire internally. People will have knowledge of safety, they'll have knowledge of procedures, yet these same people who have all this knowledge are still going to take 12 months to train. It's an oxymoron. I've got emails, and I've got one right here from someone who came through to me, and I can read it to you. The current advertising for drivers is being done internally. This is apparently following a deal done with the union. On the news this morning, it was announced that due to a lack of tutors, QR would not be able to employ drivers until next year. There are a number of train drivers currently with Horizon at Fisherman's Island that would leave Horizon to drive for QR. So we've got experienced drivers, former people who worked with QR, who are now with Horizon, who would be prepared to move over, who have the skills. Presumably, if they've been driving for QR in the past and driving with Horizon, they don't need to be retrained. Why not go there at first instance? That's an obvious look.
I'm talking with the Leader of the Opposition, Tim Nicholls. I haven't got the exact time or date, but roughly 6 to 8 months ago, the government removed, or at least did not rehire, the former Auditor General of Queensland, Glenn Poole. Now, he was appointed when you guys were in power previously. He is very familiar with public service pay structures and systems. Was it a mistake by the shareholding minister, Curtis Pitt? In fairness to Sterling Hinchliffe, it wasn't Sterling Hinchliffe, it was Curtis Pitt. Was it a mistake to remove Glenn Poole from the board of QR or not reappoint him?
Well, look, I think it was. We had great faith in Glenn Poole, primarily because he uncovered, Steve, a cost overrun in relation to the Sunlander project of some hundreds of millions of dollars, which, and I'm not going back over history, I know everyone gets sick of the blame game, but which had occurred under the Bligh government for the refurbishment of the Sunlander, and Glenn Poole had uncovered that, and we felt that his knowledge of the system would be worthwhile. Mr Poole brings an enormous amount of experience in public sector administration and as Auditor General. The board was left with a shortage of people for I believe, an unacceptably long period of time, and Mr Klug, the former chairman who has done the right thing, unlike Sterling Hinchliffe and resigned, was one of those people who had that constancy of information and constancy of experience, and now that's gone.
Now, Sterling Hinchliffe blames you or the LNP for cuts to staff training numbers. He says, quote, "We inherited this LNP mess. Despite what the LNP might want, I'm not going anywhere till it's fixed." In other words, he pointed the finger at you in my interview with him just a few moments ago, that the previous government, which you will remember, was one of the reasons why they can't train enough drivers on this roster.
Well, patently ridiculous. QR themselves haven't made that claim. The CEO didn't make that claim. This government has been in office for almost 2 years now. If this was an issue, they could have done something about it 20 months ago when they came to office. This is something that has been dreamt up by Sterling Hinchcliffe in an effort to diffuse blame. Steve, when we came to office, we had a number of problems back in 2012, and we started taking action to fix it. We said, yes, they might have been caused by the previous government, but you know what? We're in here to fix it. This government doesn't want to do that. What they simply try and do is point the finger. What next is he going to point back to? The decision to go to narrow gauge rail back before Federation, is that our fault as well? I mean, is he the minister? Is he responsible? Will he fix it? Will he take ultimate Westminster responsibility and resign? And the answer to all of those questions is no, he's not doing any of the above.
Does this have resonance of the health payroll problems that Queensland had a number of years ago, where everyone apparently was warned and knew, but just nothing seemed to happen, and as a result it cost over $1 billion to fix?
Same old Labor playbook. The warnings come up, but it goes against what the PR might want to have, the grand openings and the glitzy openings, but the right questions are not being asked. This is very much similar to what was widely regarded at the time as the biggest failure in public administration in Queensland's history.
So what would you do differently? If you were in government today, what would you do differently? You'd have the same problem.
Sure. I think the very first thing to do is have a 30-day recovery plan. At the moment, we've got a minister...
He's got a 5-point plan. He's got one.
Yeah, but his 5-point plan included getting an interim timetable, and he can't even tell you when the interim timetable is. So the first thing to do is to get the trains running within 30 days. Get the system back up and running. Put the people on that are necessary. Bring people in from outside if it's necessary. Bring in the drivers from Horizon or Pacific National and get the lines going. But I mean, at the moment, what we're simply seeing is further services being cut. And I can tell you where they're mainly being cut, Steve. They're being cut on the inner north side because they go through my electorate, and I know those ones are being cut. Most of them are coming from Northgate, and passengers are sitting on trains at Toombul, at Wooloowin, at Albion, waiting for a train to arrive and squeezing onto overcrowded trains at the moment.
Thanks for coming in.
Pleasure, Steve.
Opposition Leader Tim Nicholls.
G'day, it's Spencer Howson. If you love